What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for coming back and joining me for the season finale of the Aston Villa rebuild. Yes, today we are going to be going through everything that's happened in the final season as we look to defend our Premier League title and kick on in Europe. As I said, if you've been with us for the past couple of seasons, you'd have seen that we climbed our way to the top of the Premier League mountain, winning back-to-back Premier Leagues, but our next objective was to try and get Aston Villa back to that 1982 triumph by kicking on in the Champions League. We had a couple of goes at it, we haven't yet cracked it, but today we're going to look to kick on and we're going to show you everything that has happened in the final season of the Aston Villa rebuild. Let's get the ball rolling then, as always, by looking at the transfers. All of the activity that has happened in the final season, we're about to recap. Now, don't forget, we have two parts to the transfer window in England. Those who can move from within England and the UK from the 9th of June, and then those who can move outside of that window from the 1st of July. And then we also will pick up everything that has happened in the winter transfer window too. So we have obviously had quite a run to get to season 5. The squad has been built to try and gain as much success as we can. We have now got back-to-back Premier League titles. As I keep saying, the main focus is for us to go on and kick on in Europe. But to make sure that we could try and progress that final step, we are going to have to try and shuffle the pack a little bit, move a few players out, bring a few players in. Now again, some of them we really didn't want to move on, but as is football, these things do happen. Now let's kick off on the right hand side. In that first part of the window, you can see the first player that left the club was Aaron Ramsey. He has gone, in fact, where did he go? He went to Sunderland for £14.25 million. Now I thought this was a really good deal for the club. He had a few goes at cracking the first team here at Villa whilst I was in charge. Couldn't do it. You can see he was in a Norwich shirt at the start of the game. So it wasn't really breaking into the first team in the way that I needed him to. He wasn't reliable enough for me to just count on him when I needed him. So when the money came along, we just decided, yep, we will take it and move him on. The next player to leave was Douglas Luiz. 29 years old now, offer came in from West Ham. He actually had become a little bit disgruntled at the club, had asked to leave because I wouldn't give him a new contract that guaranteed him first team football. We already had players in the position that he was playing. It's a bit of a shame really, because in real life he is one of the players that Villa fans probably will adore the most, because he came from Manchester City and has played some really good football in the heart of that Villa midfield. But in terms of the game, you've got to kind of overlook that and just think, well, what's good for the club? And taking £17.25 million for him was good for the club. The next player to leave was Leo Ostigard. This was a player that I didn't really want to lose. Manchester United sniffing around for £37 million. We'd done all the hard work to bring him back to England. Put the time and effort in to develop him, and then at the first sight of Manchester United's interest, Ostigard decided that he wanted to down tools. Didn't really want to do anything but go to Manchester United and push through for the move, which he got for £37.5 million. So a little bit disappointed that we lost such a good first teamer, but it meant that we had money to spend. And what was the first thing that we went and did? We replaced Douglas Luiz by signing Fabio Moretti. He is a 23-year-old defensive midfielder who, as you can see, in real life plays for Juventus. Comes into this game as a bit of a wonder kid. Nobody really knows how good he can be, but in this game he has developed nicely into a player that can play in a few positions. Can be a defensive midfielder or an attacking midfielder. Can also play through the centre. The game does believe his best position is a defensive midfielder. As I said, a like for like with Douglas Luiz, bit of a younger model and one that we know is going to be able to play quickly at the top level in the Premier League. The next player that we bought in was William Boving. Just before we run through him, we bought him in from SK Sturm for £13.5 million. Player that I didn't really know a lot about, I will be honest. Our scouts did all the work for us. I think he's a bit of a bargain. 16 pace, 15 acceleration, 16 agility, 14 crossing, 15 dribbling, 12 finishing. everything's there. I don't understand why he was so cheap at this point of the game. Obviously, still playing for SK Sturm means that he hadn't got a bigger move elsewhere, but now we've bought him in. He's on 94k a week. He's valued at 58 to 64 million pounds. I think he's just one of those wonder kids that kind of fly under the radar, and a player that you can bring in. And really, when you consider that we'd got Aaron Ramsey on one hand or William Boving on the other, he really just stands head and shoulders above what Aaron Ramsey is at the club, or was at the club at the time that we let him go. And the last player in this part of the window, so in the June transfer window, or the June part of the transfer window, was Trevor Chalobah. Obviously plays for Chelsea in real life. He's a centre-back who can also cover that defensive midfield role if we need him to. So I think it all works out. He's coming as an important player. He's on 110 grand a week, valued at 56 to 61 million pounds. And luckily for us, he was on the transfer list. We paid 37.5, rising to 45 million pounds. And I do think that is going to represent a bit of a bargain. So the second part of the transfer window in England runs from the 1st of July through until the end of the summer transfer window, and then we've also got to go through January's transfer window. So let's look at the deals that we did. So there are more players that have left the club in the second part of the window. The first of which was Felipe Coutinho. Couldn't convince him to drop himself down to anything less than an important player. Yeah, he was insisting he wanted to play games. He's 34 years old, and his stats really do show that he's still an elite player, but he wasn't going to be getting in ahead of some of the players that we had. It's a difficult one. We let him walk out for nothing. It wiped a massive amount off of the wage budget as well, which meant that we had other wages to go and just offer players the wages that they want. So Coutinho going to Zenit. We had Jadon Phalange Bidace. He has gone to Frankfurt. I think this was a good deal for the club as well. 25 years old, wasn't really developing as quickly as I thought he would. Starts the game out on loan at Cardiff. Could have kept sending him on loan, but I just didn't see the development in him. So when the money came along, we cashed in and sent him there to Frankfurt for £8.25 million. Next player that left was Josip Bracalo. He came in as a left-sided player, obviously 28 years old now. Did play a couple of seasons at the club, so did quite well. Yeah, he was only ever going to be a stopgap. I think he even came in as a fringe player or just a squad player, so never really kicked off. Didn't really get the game time that he wanted. Was brilliant for us when he did play, but it was another one of those where we needed to just weigh up what we had at the club and what we needed to be competitive in the Champions League, and it all boiled down to him moving on. The next player to move on is Arnaud Calimundo. Another one, a little bit disappointing really. Kept cropping up on golden boot lists in all kinds of under 21s and different competitions that he was playing in. We signed him, didn't really take to the Premier League. If we was to look at his goals to games ratio, he actually has a pretty decent goals to game ratio. But when Darwin Núñez came in and you see what Darwin Núñez has done, you can see the reason why we had to move him on. We had a few youth teamers: Cole Beattie, Josh Feeney, Sam Yafai, Rory Wilson. They all went out to Hamilton, QPR and Everton, and then came the hammer blow that we didn't want to happen. Another one that had a transfer release clause in his contract. Tried for a few years to get rid of it. He just was having none of it. Constantly insisted on having this transfer clause in the contract, and finally Newcastle came along and they activated the fee. And he has gone off to Newcastle. £50 million it was to take him away. I was absolutely gutted, I have to admit, because we brought him in. We have trained him. We have honed his craft. We've given him the game time. And now Newcastle are going to reap the benefits of that. The other players to go out was Tim Arigbuenam going to Peterborough on loan. Aish going to Hull on loan. Hussey going to Cardiff. And Billy Gilmore went out on loan to Verona. This is the one that I said in the past season. He came as part of a part exchange deal. Didn't really know how good he was going to be, because in real life his career has kind of taken a bit of a nosedive. Looking at him, he still has decent stats, and I'm pretty sure there is a team out there that he will do well in. We are selling him on a permanent deal come the summer, but again, it meant that when we had the money from these deals going out, we did get to go and spend some of it. Now, looking on the left hand side, you can see we didn't do any business in the January transfer window. Again, it was to keep the books kind of balanced, but it was also because we spent quite a lot of money quite quickly. So we needed a left back, and we went to Crystal Palace and we bought Torrick Mitchell. He's obviously English. That's the first thing you're going to notice. We were struggling a little bit in terms of the registration, so went out and bought him, but it all makes sense anyway. Tackling of 17, pace of 16, acceleration of 15, left back. Just one that you can plug and play, and he's sound. He did cost a little bit on the expensive side, coming from Leeds actually, not Crystal Palace. He'd already moved on from Crystal Palace. Went to Leeds, £33 million. Yeah, it's probably a bit on the pricey side, but we did have money to burn, so we went and spent it. The next one we signed was Reece Oxford, former wonder kid. When he was at West Ham, spent quite a few years out in the Bundesliga, came back on a scouting report saying that he would be an interesting signing. Obviously, as I said, we moved on Douglas Luiz. We also lost Danilo, so we needed a set of legs in the middle of the park. What interested me was also he can play as a right back, can play as a normal midfielder in the centre, and can also play as a central defender. So a bit of versatility always goes far with me. The next player we signed was Ibrahim Sangare. He came from Napoli. Again, this is one, it's just replacing Danilo and Douglas Luiz, really. Not a lot to say. 29 years old, at the peak of his powers. Not as good as Danilo, but he's sound. He's going to be able to come in, do a job in the middle of the park, and if we can have a rotation option now, instead of just relying heavily on Danilo, then the money that we got for him will be well worth it. And the final player that comes in on this rebuild series is Paulinho. He has come from Borussia Dortmund. Starts the game off at Leverkusen. He's a player, I think he's a bit of an enigma type player, where he flatters to deceive. He's come in, he's played okay for the club. He hasn't really been that fantastic player that I thought we were going to get. But at the same time, we tried to force him into being more of a squad rotation option, knowing that what we got in the wings anyway was sound enough. He did have a couple of games at top and did play really, really well. But it meant that we spent all the money that we had from the transfers coming in. If you see on the right hand side, from the July part of the transfer window, we had 81 million come in. We spent 76 million of it. We didn't have too many players, which meant that the squad was a little thin in places. But the only thing that is important is, was the money that we spent worth the while? So let's move on and find out, were the players what we needed to keep us on top of the Premier League? So quickly, we're going to run through and show you that yes, it was worth it, but only just. How lucky were we? We have won the Premier League for the third time in a row, and we did it on goal difference, scoring 7 more goals than Liverpool. Champions League, we failed to progress any further, knocked out in the playoff round by Juventus, but we have added another cup to our list. The Emirates FA Cup is now in possession of Aston Villa. We also got to the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup. We were knocked out by West Ham, and we won the Community Shield at the start of the season. So technically, if you want to go for it, we have won a treble in the final season. If you only want to count the big two, we have won a domestic double. Before we break down all of the competitions that we have won, though, we're going to go over what's happening with the finances. Now, if you might have seen the previous episode, I was explaining how those dips and peaks were quite worrying at the club. Didn't want it to happen continuously, but it just seems to be the way that Aston Villa is structured. Whether they go out purposely to do it just to know that they're going to bring money back in seems a little bit crazy, because once again it has happened there. You can see that every April we are hitting the deepest part of the peak before coming back out when we have won a trophy or when we are getting prize money. So maybe it's Villa playing a little bit with fire. Not too sure, but once again, if we were continuing on with the save, we would have a overall balance of £59.7 million, but a transfer budget of £68.1 million, which is a bit of a head scratcher considering every single season they're giving us more money than they have in the bank. So not too sure what would happen if we were going forwards, but I suppose all we could do is keep hitting the dips and then hitting the peaks and then hitting the dips and then hitting the peaks. As long as we keep qualifying for the Champions League and winning the Premier League, it wouldn't be too much of a problem. The wage budget would be £3.7 million. The club are spending £3.2 million. So we're leaving it much better than when we started. Obviously, there is a positive balance of £59 million. How long that will last, I really do not know. And then the transfer budget for £68 million means that if they were to lose anybody else, like we lost Danilo, they could just go out and replace them and not really have too much problem in the transfer market. Let's have a quick run through of the Club Vision page before we go back and break down our double winning season. So you can see our job security is very secure. The actionable objectives are work within the wage budget, sign players to sell for a profit. We are on course and satisfied for the top two. Then it's still maximum 1 year contracts for over 34s, 2 years for over 32, 3 years for over 30s, and 4 year contracts for first team players. In the 5 year plan, they want to be competitive in the Champions League, something that we have struggled to do despite spending quite a lot of money. Qualify for the Europa League is something that we have found really easy to do with spending a lot of money. Looking at the board breakdown then, compiled by Christian Perslow, who is the chairperson. To summarise, the board are pleased with the overall leadership of the team, and as always, the successes remain fresh in the memories from the previous season, and they take that into account. So the board culture wants to play entertaining football, delighted. Do not sign players over the age of 28, delighted. Play high tempo pressing football, delighted. Play attacking football, pleased. And play possession football, reserved judgment. Notable highlights: pleased with the 2-0 FA Cup victory against Arsenal, pleased with the 2-1 Premier League triumph against West Ham, pleased with the positive atmosphere in the changing room, and the board have absolutely nothing to criticise, which is why our job is more than likely very secure. If we go into the supporters tab, let's see what they have to say. So they give us a minus. Overall, the supporters are delighted with the job that we are doing. They wanted to play attacking football, they're very pleased. Play entertaining football, delighted. Play high tempo pressing football, delighted. Play possession football, get the better of Birmingham, are both reserved judgment. Finish above balls in the league, delighted. Get the better of West Brom if we play them, reserving judgment. And they want to qualify for the Europa League this season, or next season should I say. Notable highlights: delighted with Florian Wirtz's recent performances, pleased with the 2-1 Premier League triumph against West Ham, very pleased with the comprehensive 4-1 victory against Bournemouth. Supporters also have nothing of particular interest to highlight in terms of criticism. So that's probably one of the first times where I have absolutely smashed the targets that the board and the fans have set, and they don't have a single criticism against the manager. Let's go back then and give you the moment that we have all been waiting for. Yes, we're going to break down the competitions tab and show you how we have got on in Season 5 in a bit more depth. Looking at the Premier League then, we will come back to that at the very end, but you can see it's been so tight between us and Liverpool, and we won the title on goal difference by a meagre 7 goals. In terms of the Champions League, we were knocked out in the playoff round by Juventus. If we go back and look at the league phase, you see we didn't perform very well, playing 8 games. We won 4. We didn't have a single draw. We lost 4. We had a goal difference of 6. We got 12 points. Coming out of the league phase, we then went out into that knockout playoff round. We drew Juventus and they beat us 4-2 on aggregate to knock us out of the Champions League. So, in fairness, a regression in terms of the Champions League, which is not something that I thought would happen. In the FA Cup, we have managed to add the FA Cup to our tally of trophies that we have won in this save for Aston Villa. If we go back all the way to the 3rd round where they enter and break it down. So in the 1st round, beating Swindon 1-0. In the 4th round, beating Blackpool 3-1. In the 5th round, beating Sheffield United 4-0. In the quarter-finals, beating Chelsea 2-0 in extra time. In the semi-finals to book the place in the final, beating Brighton 1-0. And then finally, in the final, coming up trumps against Arsenal by winning 2-0 and adding that FA Cup to the list of honours. In terms of the Carabao Cup, they were knocked out in the semi-finals by West Ham United. And then finally, the Community Shield, beating Manchester City in the curtain raiser at the start of the season, 3-0. So as I said before, it's a Premier League FA Cup double for sure. Whether you want to go and add the Community Shield on or not to make it a treble, I'll leave that up to yourself. If we go into the Premier League though and have a little look at the stages tab, you can see that this season playing 38 games, winning 28 of them, drawing 3 games, losing 7, scored 97, conceded 48, goal difference of 49, 87 points. And when you look at Liverpool's record immediately below, they played 38, won 27, drew 6, lost 5, scored 76, conceded 34 for a 42 goal difference to finish level on points. And to lose on goal difference is absolutely cruel. Did have Manchester United finishing behind us with 79, Man City with 73, Tottenham 68, Arsenal 66, and then much further back. And if you want to look for Chelsea, they are down here. They are in 13th place, absolutely languishing in mid-table. Go to the profile page then. We can see that Darwin Núñez has had another impressive haul of goals, 34 this time. He didn't lead in terms of the Golden Boot though for the Premier League. That went to Erling Haaland on 40. Erling Haaland also beat him in average rating, 7.72 to 7.70. Mo Salah getting 20 assists, but Florian Wirtz with 15 and Boving with 13. We had Darwin Núñez getting 7 Player of the Match awards, Moretti and Tariq Mitchell getting 15 and 14 yellow cards, and we had Paulinho getting 4.95 in terms of dribbles per 90 minutes. So a fantastic way to end Season 5 by winning that domestic double / treble. Absolutely fantastic. As always then, let's round it off by looking at what our best 11 was for Season 5. And just going over a few of the strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, we have the 2 different versions of this best 11. I'm going to run through both, and then I do want to just point out 1 or 2 players and show you a few things that have happened during the save. So this version of the best 11 then, it's got Martinez in goal, Mitchell, Korta, Chalobah and Fresneda. So all changed at the back from last season. You've got Moretti now making that deep line playmaker role his own. You've got Romero on the left, Abada still on the right, Palmer, Wirtz and Darwin Núñez at the top of the pitch. So in terms of the strengths, top goal scorer Darwin Núñez with 34. He got 38 last season. So amazing to only finish behind Erling Haaland once again. Florian Wirtz, best player in terms of form, 7.62 in his last 5 matches. Plenty of money in the wage budget. In terms of the youth prospects, Dan Achlak, Eden Allard, Aaron Asplin Rowley are the 3 at the club that are exciting prospects. Trevor Chalobah is one of 6 good options available to play at right back. We've got good defensive depth with Tariq Mitchell. Chalobah also plays at centre back. Defence is good. Midfield, Chalobah represents good quality in defensive midfield. So when I was going through the transfers, that was what I meant about Chalobah. He's going to be a bit of a bargain because he can play in multiple positions, and not just play at multiple positions, but be very good at them too. In terms of the weaknesses, we leave a team not a great deal of quality depth outside of the first team. Now that happened kind of by circumstance. We were losing players left, right and centre in terms of the ones that were being sold, and then I was trying to be particular in terms of bringing players in, not only to keep a bit of harmony about the squad, hoping that we could just go further in terms of the Champions League, but also banding the team together so that when we go on one of those runs where you don't win for a couple of games, they're going to turn it around. If you remember, there was a lack of leadership in the previous season, so I wanted the players to kind of take it upon themselves to kind of push the team forwards. Penalties, passing, aggression, goalkeeper depth, throwing, communications, command of area, technique, long throws, determination and composure are a few of the weaknesses in the team. If we go into the other version of the best 11 then, so it's got Martinez in goal, Tariq Mitchell, Martinez, Korta, Chalobah, Fresneda. You've got Moretti, Luca Romero, Lyle Abada, Cole Palmer, Florian Wirtz and Darwin Núñez. So all in all, a fantastic starting 11. One of the 2 things that I wanted to show you was Emi Martinez, for example. If we go into his history and go into the career stats part, you can see that he has been ever present for us, playing all but 2 Premier League games in one season there, and missing one Premier League game in the previous season that we have just completed. He has been a fantastic servant at the club. Look at Darwin Núñez. If you can see under my face over here, he actually has played 60 games and scored 72 goals for the club, being an absolute beast of a striker. In terms of the Premier League, as I said, 38 goals the season before, 34 goals this season, being involved in 4 assists and 1 assist in the previous season. Player of the Match awards, best average rating of his career. Darwin is an absolute beast on this game. As I said, somehow Liverpool sold him to Bayern Munich for 6.75 million, and then we bought him for 46. So, good deal for Bayern Munich. Good deal for us, really. The last player, well, the last 2 players I want to show you. The first one is Lila Barda. As I said, he came in, I believe, in the first season. Yeah, he's been with us since 22-23, paid £49 million for him, played 12 games in that first season, and then he has played 30 or more games in every single season since then, getting a highest average rating of 7.09. He had seasons where he scored 5 goals, he had 8 assists, there was a season with 9 assists. Again, he has become an absolute fantastic servant at the club, and such a bargain. I mean, £49 million may sound like a lot of money, but when you think about what we've got, he's still 25, would still be climbing into his peak. It says here he could still improve. Yeah, absolute baller for the money we paid. And then finally, Florian Wirtz. What a man. Another one, 24 years old, could still improve. Has played 91 times for Villa, 25 goals from that attacking midfield slot. It does look like his stats are dropping off a little bit, but in terms of what he is, he's only going to get better. He's a star player at the club. Looking at his stats, he's absolutely fantastic. You can see why I paid £110 million for Florian Wirtz. If we go back to the club info and briefly have a last little look at this. So if we go to the Premier League, you can see that Villa have now got 10 Premier League titles into double digits. R3, 25, 26, 27 going alongside 1981's previous victory. If we go across to the FA Cup, you can see that Aston Villa now have 8 FA Cups too. Our 2027 success coming exactly 70 years after Aston Villa's last success in 1957. So absolutely amazing numbers. Won 3 Premier League titles. We've won the FA Cup. What a fantastic rebuild project this is. If I was going further, I still think it's got excitement in it. I'm not going to push on though. I give myself 5 seasons and 5 seasons only normally to get these done, and I'm very happy with the job that we have done at Aston Villa. Right, if you're still with me at this point of the video, firstly, a big thank you for watching. Secondly, if you don't mind hitting the like and subscribe button, also you can hit the notification bell so you get to see every single video that comes out. There at the moment has been daily tactic videos, there's other let's plays, there will be a few hints, tips, tutorials, wonder kids. There's a little bit of something for everybody on the channel. If you don't want to miss out, make sure you hit that notification bell and you will never miss another video on the channel again. So to wrap it up, a fantastic rebuild with Aston Villa, 3 Premier League titles, 1 FA Cup, the biggest team in the second city. It's been an absolute blast. So I'm going to leave it there. A big thank you for watching. Don't forget to come and check out another rebuild on the channel very soon.